Smart Cities Conference. Yesterday was a pretty exciting day of presentations and discussions on, obviously, the technologies of the future, with a certain focus on construction, which is great for us. This event today is sponsored by Conconcreto, and I am Armando Montero. I'm the director of the Masters of Construction Management program here at the School of Architecture. That program is a relatively new program. Our focus since the start of the program has been the future of construction, not the past. Everything we see around us is the past of construction. We're looking at the new disruptions in construction. We want to see changes in the construction. There are so many issues that we all have to work with and live with, even if we're not building, that are affected by construction. The students that graduate from our program are very successful. They go out in the industry. We want to create thought leaders. And so events like this are very important to them. Our partner in this is Conconcreto. Conconcreto, over the past 60 years, has emerged as a leader in the transformation of the construction industry. Their non-conventional approach to building has gained national and international recognition. Using the state-of-the-art technology that they have been able to eliminate and reduce waste, costs, adding value to owners and users alike. They've also focused on sustainable issues in construction, sustainability, and they're making great headways in that. If you think for a moment about the construction industry, it's plagued by inefficiencies and lack of productivity. We look at that industry, it's a mega industry, it's huge. We're all affected by it, as I said. A 1% reduction of costs or an improvement of inefficiencies in productivity in construction is a remarkable figure, trillions and trillions of dollars. Enough to pay for all the cancer drugs in the world. Just 1%. It's a huge industry. We're all affected by it. We can't find affordable housing, costs are rising, and it's all due to a series of just events that add to the burdens that society has to carry. It's not only productivity in the sense of the man hours put in, it's also material shortages, logistics, and all these other issues that plague the industry. The industry is also aging, as we all are in society. Most of the leaders in the industry are in my age group. We're all ready for retirement. There's a great wall of resistance in accepting technology, which is so much part of the smart cities movement. So construction ultimately has to turn from the conventional route of construction to smart building. And fortunately, we have companies like Conconcreto and some others that are really focused on smart building, building smarter. They're addressing issues that yield from, that just deal with workflows to materials, to logistics, et cetera, as I said before. We also need partnerships, and I'm happy to see today some of them, but certainly in the public sector, we're all burdened by government that is just dragging and adding to the inefficiencies in the building industry. Waste in the construction industry, you all know about this, I'm sure you do. 40% of the material is wasted. That's staggering. 40% of the material is wasted. You take a piece of lumber, you cut it, you throw half of it away, you use a piece of it. So it's a humongous problem that needs to be addressed. As it is right now, we're not going to be able to meet the global demands for housing by 2035. I mean, we're already behind, but we're just not, there would be no hope of it. So these problems need to be looked at. We believe, as we're sitting here and discussing these issues at this conference, that the industry is ripe for a paradigm shift, a disruption, and we're happy that we have a floor at this event to kind of encourage the rest of the community to think about it, because it is a hole in the dike that's just leaking. And since it doesn't affect most of us, we think about it, and I like to look at it as seeing people who think that everything is fine, all things should be the same way, as people sitting on a beach looking at a ripple in the distance, not realizing that it's a tidal wave and it's going to hit them on the beach pretty fast. That's how construction will be. When it gets to the point that it adopts all these initiatives, it will be like a tidal wave. It will be totally disruptive. So I'd like to start this program, because this part of the program is talking about smart building, with introducing our first panel moderator, Inés Muñoz. Inés, one of our star students from the construction management, recent graduate. She's from Mexico, and Inés has a degree in mechanical engineering. She then moved to Miami to pursue our master's degree, and she graduated from the School of Architecture, Construction Management last year. She's currently working at Coastal. She's doing her rounds, first in pre-construction and estimating, and now I hear she's going to be out in the field on Monday, getting some boots in the ground experience, which is so valuable for our students. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Inés.
Thank you, Armando. It's really nice to be back. I actually took classes in this room, so it's very exciting and emotional to be here. I would like to introduce our first panel. From Autodesk, we have Jaime Rosales. Also from Autodesk, we have Julio Palma. Then from Bilbao, we have Andrés Rojas. And from Conconcreto, we have César Rodríguez. So there's a microphone next to you if you're going to speak up. So since we're at UM and most of the audience are students, they are very familiar with the famous 30-second elevator pitch. So I thought it would be a good idea to have each of you give us your introduction of who you are, what you do, in an elevator pitch mode. So starting here on my right with César.
Hello, everyone. Like I said, my name is César Rodríguez, and I am the BIM director of Conconcreto. And I am in charge of the BIM implementation around the company. The new process, the new BIM process, the upgrade the existing BIM process, investigating new technologies, and support the BIM process inside the project. So we are a team in charge of all this digitalization in the project.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrés Rojas. I'm the CTO at Bilbao. Bilbao is the startup that is trying to actually improve productivity in the world through connecting designers, constructors, and vendors in the same platform in order to bring more predictivity in supply chain using BIM, obviously.
My name is Jaime Rosales. I'm part of Autodesk. I'm a senior software engineer. actually a developer advocate, and what that means is that I'm a coder that likes to talk to people. I came to Autodesk through the acquisition of BIM 360 Glue. It's probably a product that got acquired around 10 years ago. And now I focus into the new web services platform, which is called Autodesk Forge, which you will hear a little bit more about it later.
Hi everyone, my name is Julio Palma. I am civil engineer. I am part of the technical sales team of Autodesk in Latin America. And actually I have been the liaison from Conconcreto, specifically with Cesar, supporting their BIM implementation.
Well, thank you all for coming, and it's very exciting to have you all. So one of the hot topics when it comes to construction tech nowadays, it's the digital twin. For those of you who are new to the term, when you Google digital twin, the first definition that comes is one by IBM, that says a digital twin is a virtual representation of an object or system that spans its life cycle. It's updated from real-time data and uses simulation, machine learning, and reasoning to help decision making. So to understand this term a little bit better, could each of you give in a few sentences your own definition from your point of view of what you do, what a digital twin do, and what it is?
Okay, from the side of BIM, when we talk about a digital twin, we are talking about data. Yes? These digital models are integrated by data around the project. So this is very connected to the BIM methodology because when we talk about BIM, we are talking about data for the project. And this digital twin is a very important topic for BIM because normally the BIM is only in the design area or in the construction area. But when we talk about a digital twin, we have to span the life cycle of these digital models. And this is very important. And I think it's very nice that the university and the academies are started talking about this because normally the designers, the architects, or the structural engineers they only think the building just goes to when we finish the construction. And if we want to take all the potential of these digital twins, we have to span his life cycle to the operation part of the building. So for me, the digital twin is the end of the BIM. Right? When we talk about BIM, we have to start from the end, what we want to answer with the BIM model. So for me, the digital twin is these answers, is what the owner of the building have to operate his projects.
Okay, so from my side, I would say that a digital twin is a tool that is trying to break the gap between computers and reality. Like it's trying to mimic as good as possible whatever's happening in the project, whatever's happening to the asset through its lifespan. And what we understand is that this is almost like a living thing that is fed through data every day, every second. And it starts from the design phase, it starts from the supply chain, and we are trying to do that as real as possible in every step of the process. So a digital twin is just a tool that tries to break that gap because it's been too long and we understand computers are very far from reality, and that has to stop.
Okay, for me will be, I guess, it kind of like sums up to a word, and I will call it efficiency. The fact of doing a mirror technology itself that allow you to just feed in data into a digital model and then get represented within the one in the field. And a fun fact about the digital twin itself, I will say that if you didn't know, NASA was probably one of the first ones to do that approach of a mirror technology. And it was a long time ago. It was 1970, actually. During the Apollo 13 mission, they needed to do like some calculated risk-taking and do a mirror technology of what the capsule was going around the moon in order to just avoid any more risk on it. I'll say itself, it just gives you the opportunity to do a more efficient way to take calculated risk in order to avoid further problems into a project.
Okay, from my side, I think the definition of digital twin is about predictability, right? Because you need to try to predict what's going to happen in every single stage of the project. And you need to be conscious about what data do you need in each stage to be able to take decisions, to analyze that data and take decisions. So I think predictability is the key word here.
Nice. I think it's very interesting how BIM and digital twins are present throughout the whole course of construction, right? Not just one part. So to understand its power a little bit more, I would like to break it down into its two main phases. So starting with pre-construction, where everything's starting, you're planning the party. And that is, can you tell us how Bimbao is using BIM and digital twins throughout the pre-construction stage and supply chain? And what are some of the main challenges that you see every day?
Okay, so Bimbao is using BIM to be able to, from the beginning of the project, from the design, it's matching the components, the BIM objects, directly with providers and vendors of construction materials. So what we do is that we have a big database of vendors that are continuously feeding information, accurate and updated information about every material. And that is providing real-time data for decision making. So we are trying to achieve a point where even architects and designers are able to impact the process of the design and the result at the end. What we're doing with BIM is that we're integrating the real information that flows through our platform, which is part of it. It's an e-commerce. It's a marketplace that connects everyone in the design phase. And the important thing is that we are connecting everyone from the design phase. So vendors have updated information from the design phase. Constructors, general contractors, they also have information from design phase. And we're giving the power to architects and designers to help make those decisions with data. And I would say that one of the biggest challenges that we are facing nowadays is that the quality of the information that is floating around the web, I'm sorry about the word, but it sucks. It's just not enough. It is not enough for making decisions. We have seen BIM objects that are literally boxes with just height, width, and depth, and that's it. With that information, we just cannot do anything. So it's become part of our mission to improve the quality of the information in every BIM project through BIM with high-quality data. And with that data, we are helping everyone in the supply chain make better decisions.
That is very interesting. When you say you connect everyone from the beginning, and all the parties basically start from the design phase, I wonder, and I want to hear Jaime's opinion on how Forge can be used as a platform on this, and then what are the applications that you see that the industry is adapting to, that Forge can supply and provide, and which ones are they struggling to adapt to?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you that don't know what Autodesk Forge is, it's basically a web service platform that we develop at Autodesk in order to tap into the CAD data. This gives you the opportunity to interact with either construction data, manufacturing data, or even a combination of both. So we have different kind of services that allow you to do visualization of this CAD data directly into a browser. When it comes to the digital twin side of it, we know that we can take, for example, a model of already designed and constructed building, and then just start looking into the data that comes in from a combination with IoT, a combination of machine learning, start learning about how the building itself is behaving in order to let us know and do predictive risk analysis in order to interact more with this data itself. And going back to my previous word into the digital twin side of it with efficiency, right? One of the biggest challenges, I guess, that we see now in the industry is one of them, like Bimbao mentioned, the lack of data in some of those objects, but sometimes also if the amount of data that a certain kind of object ends up having, which is way too much, and then we end up with a lot of data that it's actually not necessary for the development of it. So I'll say there's a way to keep it simple and then represent all this process directly into a CAD model itself.
Nice. So moving on to the other side of construction, when it's actually being physically built, the construction stage, I would like to ask Cesar with Conconcreto, how does Conconcreto use this digital twin throughout the construction phase? And is it working? Are you seeing a common challenge with it? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yes, and our biggest challenge with this technology is not about technology. It's about the way we approach the project. This is the important thing about this, because the technology is only tools to take the best decisions for the project. But our biggest challenge is how we approach this project, because normally we don't see the project as a project. Maybe sound obvious, but when you think in an architect, this architect is thinking only in his drawings, in the space, in the aesthetics of the building, but doesn't think, for example, in the operation. Sometimes don't think in the construction side. And it happens with all the specialists. Every specialist, the mechanical, the electrical, everyone is thinking in his part. But no one is connected. They work as an island, right? So our biggest challenge is to see the project as a project, because maybe I am an architect, but I have to think in the construction side, in the budget, in everything. Not to be an expert in everything, but my part has a big impact in other parts. So yes, there is technology, but if we don't start to think in these situations, this technology, like Andrew said, is just garbage data, right? We have to start to think in a more integral way around the projects from all these sides. I think this is our biggest challenge, yes, to start to approach the project in that way, because only in this way the BIM will be more important, because always the BIM are focused in the end of modeling, right? We are just producing 3D models, 3D models, but this is just 3D information. We start to focus in the area, the information, because it's this data that is important for the digital twin.
That is very interesting. It sounds like it's just the beginning of something that could be way more connected, which is very exciting for the construction industry, and it's definitely lacking right now. Right. So something that all of you mentioned, it's the word tools, right? How this is a tool. So I want to ask Julio with Autodesk, what are some of the tools that Autodesk either has or is developing to implement more BIM in digital twins? And why should anyone, from the designers, architects, engineers, to the contractor, owner, or even the end user, should choose to use them?
Okay, actually, I will start with the common platform. We have been really connected with the ISO regarding BIM, and we are really committed with the common data environment. So our first approach is to provide the common data environment that is actually right now it's Autodesk Construction Cloud. Autodesk Construction Cloud is a big repository where you get all your data, all your information of the project from the very beginning of the project. Actually, at the very end, we also have on the opposite side. We also have actually we were mentioning with Jaime before this about Tandem. Tandem is the opposite side of the project when you get all the operation and maintenance, and in the middle between all that journey, we are going to have the authoring tools, like maybe most of you already know Formit, for example, in the very early stages of the project, Revit for the all detailing about architecture, structure, and MEP systems, and some others regarding the site design, like Civil 3D. And finally, you are going to manage all the pre-construction and construction phase also in Autodesk Construction Cloud. That is the common data environment. So that's kind of all the environments of tools regarding Autodesk.
That sounds pretty exciting. So where is this all going? What's next? What's the future of BIM? What's the future of the construction industry? Do any of you have a vision to share?
Okay, maybe I start. I think what BIM is doing to the project is we are planning better the project. With BIM, we are design better, build better, and operate better. And I think this is the challenge. This is the future of BIM. Already today, we have a really great tools. The challenge is how to use these tools to get the right answers. When we talk about BIM in our company, we like to think in the last part. What are the answers we want to respond with BIM? It's not to start to do a lot of 3D models, rotating and nice renders for the meetings or something. Is what we want to resolve with the BIM models. For us, this is the important part. With BIM, we can do everything we can imagine. But we have to start to focus in what are the problems we have to resolve. And these problems is always different for each building, for example. For a building, maybe it's important to control the mechanical system. For other, maybe it's the budget. This is the answers we have to start to formulate, to focus the BIM in that way. For me, this is the biggest challenge, because the tools are there. It's the way what we are going to use these tools.
Do you think it's going to be a long-term thing where even once the project is done, it can be used to maintain the building or to track data for the future?
I don't know. I think it's important to start to construct this methodology to face this part of the operation, this part of the building operation. In fact, in the world, we have a new, I don't know how to say, the ISO, the 1965, it's like a normative for the BIM used in the project. And this normative is focused totally in the operation part. So this is important because we are not thinking in all this life cycle of the building. We are only focusing in the beginning part. So we have to start to think in all this life cycle completely.
And this normative is worldwide, also for the US, for Latin America?
Yes, this is norm. For example, in Colombia is already implemented. I think in US is already this norm.
Andres, what do you think of the future of BIM?
I really think that the future in construction, it's towards a revolution driven by data. And what we see in the company, what we see in BIMBAO is that it's two phases. The first one is important with BIM and high quality information. And the next one is with digital twins that allow the maintenance and projection of how we are going to operate the assets, how we are going to maintain, and what can we do to improve the efficiency and the sustainability of everything, even from the beginning of a project. So what is coming for the upcoming years is that young people, young architects, young engineers are going to come out and they are going to use the tools that have been neglected in the last couple of years. And that is going to bring change. And change is going to be driven through data.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you when you say the word revolution. Because when we think back when the Empire State was built, right? We're basically using the same methods today. It hasn't changed that much. Even though we have the tools and we have the platform, we just haven't adapted. Even when we compare it with other industries like the car industry and manufacturing, that has exponentially changed from years ago. So I do agree that there's a revolution coming. We have the tools. We have Autodesk here telling us some of those tools that can help to coordinate all that and make a big change in the construction industry. So from the Autodesk eyes, what do you think it's the future? How do you see it?
I guess on the construction side of it, the fact that we have access to all this data can allow even at some point a building to become completely smart. We have a way to, with the tracking of, let's say, sensors and all that, let you know. Let's imagine this building that it's like filled with people from certain time during the day. Temperature kind of like rise up. We can start becoming more efficient, and the building actually can start learning how to become more efficient with doing a pre-cooling session before people actually come in. We use less energy and so on. We have all the tools for that. So now, touching base on the word revolution itself, it's that I start seeing a lot of careers in like architecture, civil engineering, all that, also starting to tap a little bit into the technology side with uses like Dynamo, for example. Like, I don't know if there are any architects in the room from a couple years ago. Like, I don't think they thought about doing visual programming at some point in order to automate a task to become more efficient at the time of designing a project and so on. So I think there is a good revolution coming up, and we need to just kind of like stay in touch with how the technology will be affecting this industry. And like you said, manufacturing is one of the ones that has adapted to it pretty well, but we're still seeing a little bit of like pushback on the construction side. But I think it's not gonna take too long in order to just do this jump into the next era. We did see this with 2 years of virtual environments due to the pandemic, and there was a lot of adaptability from, I would say, like owners of a company to the like junior architect in order to collaborate with people no matter where they were located. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely something big coming up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So when you say the building will adapt, you say, for example, the shades of a window, it's going to know if there's sun and they're going to automatically come up or come down, I guess.
Yeah, so it can predict all that based on data, right? We have data from weather, for example, for the last, I don't know how many years. We have data about which kind of days are the ones that they tend to have more traffic in the office. With this kind of like hybrid mode now, we know already that, let's say, Wednesdays it's a day that everybody comes into the office. So we already know that the energy itself that is going to be raised up during that day could be used efficiently in order to just become like more sustainable in the world of making the building itself smarter to adapt to this kind of conditions. Nice.
And when you say the word sustainable, how about the construction phase for you, Julio? How can construction create less waste and also speed the construction? How can it be more efficient?
Okay, two main topics there. The first one is about being conscious about what materials are available you to use in the project. So, and BIM it's a big facilitator of that process. When you know what amount of materials you are going to consume in the project, that is a very easy scheduling Revit, for example. We are going to be able to link that information, that materials requirement, with some actually open databases about the CO2 print that is available in your area of the project. So that's something that's really useful right now, and it's a carbon embodied carbon calculation. Really simple. So that's the first part. And second part is lean processes. You need to use the data that is available in your BIM in all your BIM files or your BIM models in order to be able to use it and to try to develop your strategy on the field. So the data is there, as Jaime mentioned. The data is there, and it's in some amount good and maybe not so good quality of that data, but you need to use that data in order to identify how you're going to approach the day activities on the field. So it's all about that data.
Yeah. And I guess with that, it also goes coordination, right? So with Revit, for example, the designer has to coordinate with the contractor to share the model, so then he can get the quantities, so then they can build better and then pass that to the subcontractors and create a whole chain of organization and team, right? Going on with Revit, do you see any challenges on that side of construction and design phase nowadays?
Yeah, actually, it's really related with Andres' field of expertise about trying to choose the right data and the right objects about what you are going to need to get to deliver a good project. You need to choose the best objects in order to get a good project. And data, it's all about, as I mentioned, it's all about data. You need to try to be really sharp in order to try to get the best information and the best suppliers in the market that you need to implement and get that information to your final customer. At some point is going to be the developer, at some point is going to be the final user of the project. So yeah, that's it. It's about using and try to investigate the best sources of families, for example, in Revit, in order to use that data for your project.
Okay. So Andres, yeah.
I want to complement some of the questions you made to Julio, because this is something we are working really hard in our company, because we talk about data, but we also talk about, for example, the prefabrication. This is important for us. You mentioned the naval company, the automotive, the cars company. We have to start to prefab our buildings. This is a big part to increase the productivity in the projects. Yes, and we can do of course with data, but we have to integrate all these professionals to make these efficiencies in the project. So I want to complement Julio's answer, because for us this is important, to increase the productivity, to optimizing the construction process, to prefabricate, to use platforms like BIMBAO when we start to define from early stage the specifications of the building. All these things increase the efficiency of the sector.
So I guess you kind of read my mind, because I wanted to ask Andres and you, since you guys use BIM on your companies to construct or on the pre-construction and supply chain, if you could share with us one example of a project or an implementation that you do or you have done that it actually came beneficial in
Yes.
it helped
For example,
the company.
I don't know, Alejandra, if we can put the video of the. For example, this is a residential building in our city. You are seeing here some point clouds we use for the projects, but we start to use BIM to take this kind of decisions about the sustainability, not only the design. For example, you are going to see here a structural BIM models. Is all designed in prefab elements. So we can do this if we start to synchronize all the specialists from the beginning. This is our biggest challenge, like I said before, and the benefits are huge. For example, this is the normal exercise you see about design coordination. But for example, this is colored model is the programming of the project, is the time of the project. And we can do this only if, for example, the the programming expert sit next to the structural designer because there are decisions they have to take in the same moment. So this is important for us. And this is what we start to see BIM as a database, but for all the life cycle of the building. Not a BIM model for the architect, not a BIM model for the structural, no. This is only one project. Maybe it's composed by several BIM models, but all these BIM models have to talk between each one. It has to be articulated. We have to permit important decisions, not only design decisions, not technical decisions, but also business decisions. This is important. If BIM allow us to take that kind of decisions, for us this is a big step we do for the construction company.
Have you always used BIM, or was this one of the first projects that it started like that?
I have to say we use BIM in the almost 100% of the project, maybe 95 or something. When we don't use BIM, it's maybe because it's a very old project or something, but in our company we use BIM in every project. And we are start to using in the construction part. Almost all the projects already have BIM models. Sometimes we have projects from external designers, so maybe even in that cases, we start to transform this external information to BIM to integrate this information from the construction part. So yes, we are very focused in using BIM in our projects, but not only 3D models. To take decisions through BIM.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. 95%, it's a big percent of your program. You can say basically you use it all the time.
Use it all the time.
And how about you, Andres? Do you have an example of how you've used BIM and how it was beneficial, or you saw the efficiency compared to other projects you've done?
Okay, so one of the rules in Colombia for construction is that we never end the projects on time and on budget.
That's in Miami too.
Yeah, I think it's globally. And one of the important things is that with BIM-BAU, we have 200 active projects, and the projects that started and finished using BIM-BAU as a base, they finished on time and on budget. So it is not the future. This is something we're doing right now. We are doing improvement in the performance of the projects today. And even with BIM, and I was talking to you earlier about data quality, we have partnered up with Autodesk, and we are using Revit to do this. And we already have a alpha release of a plugin that is going to allow architects and designers to download the best quality information BIM models. You can visit at revit.bimbau.co. And you can register there, and there you can find the best quality information BIM objects. So it is happening right now. We are doing it right now. We're changing the way construction is happening in Colombia. We're about to move to the US and start working with the same goal here. And BIM has been like a huge part of that improvement in performance.
And do you use the buildings that you use BIM and then go back and study the data for future projects? Has there been that implementation?
I think that is one of the biggest things that we do not see today. BIM, we see BIM and digital twins as something that is linear, but it is not. It is a loop. It has to loop back to feed the next project. It has to loop back to feed the information about the things that we missed, the things that we did right, the things that we did wrong, in order to improve and continue improve the efficiency of construction. So with this kind of thought, we are gathering all of the information from the projects that are going through the platform in order to make data science and artificial intelligence models to help better decision making with data.
That's pretty cool. How about in Autodesk, is there any tool that you can use to analyze the data that comes from BIM?
So with what Bimbao is doing with the Revit plugin itself, we have services now to basically allow you to do all the same, but completely outside of Revit, just running directly on a cloud-based engine. Definitely, there are tools that help you to analyze this. We're looking into a lot of like machine learning as well, in order to do this, I guess, automation of analysis of the data, in order to basically pass on those that knowledge into the next projects and so on. I'm pretty sure you will see some of the other stuff like coming up this next Autodesk University. So it's gonna be in New Orleans, by the way. So it's kind of close for you guys. So
When is it coming?
It's at the end of September. Yeah.
So I guess just to finish up and wrap everything up, I have a final question for all of you, and which is, what can a young professional such as a UM student do today to start using these tools and to be one step ahead of the construction industry and to be prepared for everything that's coming? Let's start with Julio.
Okay, I would say that when you face, it doesn't matter what phase of the project you are involved, think with the end in mind. Think with the end in mind, trying to identify what data you are going to use, and what data you are going to deliver, in order to try to make the decisions that you are going to make the analysis that are going to provide you with that data at the time you need to deliver. So I know this sounds really philosophical, but it is really that's a big challenge, and I would say I have been facing that challenge, that you get really focused on the task but not on the end. So try to focus on what data you need to deliver at the end of your deliverable, in order to make your work really efficient. And when you use this technology, you're going to be able to do that.
I will say, to me, to a young professional, let's see, I'm going to think about it like I was talking to myself like 10, 15 years ago. I will say, be curious. I think curiosity itself can take you a very long way. Even though if you start in a certain kind of path in your career, curiosity can take you to different kind of new solutions. Like I said, I have even like interviewed amazing software engineers that are now, that actually started as architects, but they come into the company with all this knowledge that a pure software engineer actually doesn't have, because it doesn't like know the industry that well, like an architect or a civil engineer and so on. And all this was achieved because of the curiosity of the person itself to just learn more about it. So be curious, even though if you think you're not going the right path, because it's kind of like taking you off what you study and so on. I'll say there is definitely, like, for example, you were a mechanical engineer, right? And then you came into construction, and now, like, this is where you are. So I think in some way it was part of your curiosity to understand a different kind of world at the same time. So I will say, yeah.
100%.
My advice would be a rebel. Like, think differently. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but we are in the stage that we need change, and we need it quickly. We need it fast. And it's in your hands to do this and to take action. And that action comes from using the tools. It is, I've been selling Bimbao for about 1.5 years. And it's almost unbelievable how much pushback we get from more seasoned general contractors and developers and all of that. So it is in your hands to use the tools and to think differently and to start making the change. If you don't start making the change, it will not happen by itself. Or you're going to be seeing other people doing amazing things, and you're going to be just there sitting and watching. So be a rebel, be curious, be the change.
Okay, I will say the same thing I say before. We start to think in projects. We start to think to approach the projects in a more integral way. Maybe we are studying architecture or civil engineer or something, but we are a part or a big project. So we have to start to think in that way, thinking in the end, what the project need from an architect, what the projects need for a structural, and we have to start to approach the project in that way. Also, and when we talk about the life cycle of the buildings, I really like to see a space like this, what we are today, because we are start to thinking in digital twin for the operation that is normally something we doesn't think too much. Yeah, and this is important. And if you see, we are always talking about data. Yes. So we start to study about these topics, data management, data science, because this is the heart of the BIM methodology on the digital twins. We have to start to think in that topic.
Nice. So think of what you want to deliver, work backwards, be curious, be a rebel, and be a team player. That's awesome. So does anyone in the audience have any questions for our panelists?
Thank you for great discussion. We learned a lot of food for thought. In another panel discussion that Armando inaugurated, I remember one of the speakers suggesting that there's one obstacle to the adoption of the BIM by everyone, like the architects, the fabricators, the constructors, etc. And it's the legal, basically, framework. Because the current situation clearly delineates all the responsibilities and liabilities. So once actually everyone is on the same platform, it makes it harder. And that we saw as an obstacle to integration of the building industry on one platform. How do you feel about this?
I agree, it's a big obstacle, but we have to deal with that. For example, we start to see these integrate project delivery contracts that start to integrate all the disciplines in just one contract, to start to eliminate these legal situations. But we have to start from that, from this point. I agree this is something to start to work, but with time, I think we start to surpass these situations right now. For example, I read a few months ago a project from the New York City. They asked for the BIM model integrated. So it's from the legal side that start to demand this kind of situation. Of course, there is some particularities that we have to start to deal, but even the governments are start to impulse this kind of collaborative work.
I really think that this is not something that is happening with just BIM. It's been happening since, I don't know, the invention of cars. When cars were invented, there were no legal laws and legal terms on how to operate those machines. So I really think that what we have to see is a cultural change. We need to start thinking about how this impacts every aspect of the construction life cycle. And with that understanding and changing the mindset and culture of everyone involved, not only from the construction side, but the legal side, but the marketing side, there we can see change, and that is something that has never been easy, but just the continuous using of the technology is going to enable that change with time.
I guess from my side, it's more about definitely it's an industry that needs to go through some sort of disruption as well. The fact that things have been done in a certain way for so many years doesn't mean that they can get improved, and that's something that it is something that we need to educate people into it. There's going to be a lot of pushback. There still is a lot of pushback. But I think once you get the opportunity to show them what's going to be that, I guess, that benefit in regards to something that doesn't have a value like time, it's definitely something that can incentivize them in order to become more adaptable into the BIM methodology itself.
I would say that those legal issues come from thinking about that's not my business. When the owner thinks about, okay, that design data is not my business. Is not my business. My business is just deliver the plans. And when the operator says, okay, that's not my business. I just need to deliver the assets that I'm going to operate from now on. When that data consciousness is not in every single stakeholder, you can implement some changes in the legal forms that support the business. So I think that in order to every single stakeholder is more conscious about the data, about data flow between them, the different stakeholders, those legal issues are going to be overcome.
Hello. During the panel, it was brought up the idea of going from building to assembling, right? And trying to kind of increase that efficiency. When we think about the different stakeholders in a project, who has to take that initiative? Like the developer, the designer, the contractor. In many cases, the designer steps into a project and they try to think, let me do something revolutionary, right? But at the end of the day, when you present something, the reality is that not every contractor can bring that into life, right? So do we need to start collaborating from the get-go? Does the developer need to really push that communication, or does the designer just say, okay, this is my vision, this is how my project will work, and just convince the people investing on it to really push that?
What I think is that the main decision has to come from the developer. It has to come because they need to perceive the value of BIM. And that is something that is being hard nowadays, because you don't. Most of the stakeholders in the construction cycle, they do not see the value of BIM, and as they do not see it, and as they see it as a problem, so it needs to come from whoever's holding the long side of the stick. So, but the other stakeholders become enablers. Because if the architects do not enable the process using BIM, even if the developer demands it, it is not going to happen. Or it is not going to have the best outcome possible. So one of them is the one who sees the value needs to come with the proposal, but everyone else has to become an enabler.
I would say that, just to compliment Andres, is that once you as an owner, as a developer, you know that, as a developer, not an owner, as a developer, you know where your business is going to. You need to be aware about, you need some specific staff that needs to provide the guidance to the other stakeholders, because you need those benefits in your project, in your business. So yeah, I would agree that it should be come from the developer side in the first instance.
I would like just to add, coming from the construction side, that you can always raise your hand and give the idea, because maybe the owner hasn't been exposed to that, right? So every stakeholder can always bring it up and speak up for the change.
Okay, so
think
taking
one-
into account, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say we have one last question.
Thank you. Taking into account that right now the South Florida market is more or less focused on residential developments, and some of them are rentals and the other ones are for sale. How do you think that the twin model can apply for projects that are not for rent but for sale? How do you think that a final user, which is the home buyer, can use that tool as useful for the life cycle of what they buy? I mean, do you think that digital twin can apply for that type of sector, or just for maintain an asset?
I think it can apply to all kinds of sector on the construction side. If it's for, let's say, a house sale or something like that, it can help them out to do predictions into maintenance for the future and so on. The BIM model, it's available. There is no need to kind of like figure out where certain things in that house are going to be. There is data that becomes available for that. There's ways to predict like how often a certain kind of maintenance, let's say on piping or something like that, needs to happen. So yeah, like at the end, like itself, like data becomes kind of like that new currency for the construction industry, and not only the construction industry, but also for the owner of the property itself.
I think that the key word there is predictability. Like, if you can predict how the asset is going to behave on the next year, you are going to be able to make better decisions on when to make maintenances, when to improve things, when to change things in order to increase the property value. So I really think that is one of the key items in why using digital twins and BIM, and it's because it allows to reduce the uncertainty on everything from design to construction and operation of assets. So if you are able to understand what is going to be the impact of something, and you can model that, you can start having different models in order to obtain which one is the best one for your goal, then you're going to have an impact in how you do business.
I think the biggest challenge is how we are going to manage this data, this amount of data. I think this is the biggest challenge, because the data is there. So how we are going to transfer this data to the owner, to the resident. I think this is the biggest challenge for me.
I think I will, just to finalize on that and add on it, will be, imagine getting an email from your house at a time that needs, I guess, like a plumber to come by and fix something that it's about to just become a mess. That's where you start seeing that adaptability into like smart building, smart houses and so on. The data's there, right? So the model is there. There is, you already know like what's the lifespan of a certain kind of part that lives within the house itself. So yeah, I dig that. Like I would like to get notified in advance in order to do like an economical like projection of what's going to cost me and so on without becoming a surprise.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We will be rolling into the second panel and take a break after the second panel. So this was actually building on, go wait until the pictures are done. I'm hoping this session actually began creating the vision of a new future in construction for you. A couple of things, a couple of housekeeping events. If you scan the graphic there on the right-hand side, your right-hand side, you can download the program, all the bios, etc. So if you wish to do that, you can do that. We want to thank also the participant, as a participant, the Autodesk. And I also forgot to mention in the first session that Conconcreto has generously funded a research unit for the construction management program and the School of Architecture, which are going to address a lot of these issues, like interconnectivity, workflows, digitizing the industry, et cetera. So there's a tremendous, tremendous, exciting future in construction. I'm hoping to see a whole new industry with the help of our partners in the next few years, hopefully as short as 5 to 10 years. So with that, I'd like to introduce panel 2. Panel 2 is going to focus, the discussion is going to focus on multi-model simulation for smart infrastructure. So we just went from vertical to perhaps horizontal, but we'll see what that turns out to be. The moderator is Catalina Cabral-Framinan. Catalina is a rising third-year architecture student here at the University of Miami School of Architecture on a dual degree track for a Bachelor's of Architecture and a BA in History. She holds a deep interest in digital fabrication. You often see her in our labs, and methods of digitizing construction. And she's also a lab assistant at the Conconcreto research unit. So, Catalina, you here? There you go. Welcome, Catalina, and I'll let you do the introductions to everyone else. It's an interesting mix of history and...
Yeah. So our two panelists are Daniel Cremades and Edmundo Herrera. Daniel is a civil engineer with 15 and more plus years of experience leading major international projects in Europe, ex-URSS, and Latin American countries. He is now based in Miami as the USA country manager of Conconcreto, a top-notch Latin American construction company focused on infrastructure engineering and innovation, with $1 billion in long-term own assets investments. A high-performance leader, Daniel is committed to solving projects and dealing with organizational challenges. He has successfully led large business launches for several companies in more than 10 countries and over 3 continents. Edmundo is a civil engineer licensed in the state of Florida, working for Autodesk as an infrastructure technical specialist engineer for major mid-market federal accounts and departments of transportation in the United States. He is a BIM senior technical engineer for Autodesk's civil engineering applications, including Civil 3D, InfraWorks, Inventor, Revit, Structural, Navisworks, and Recap, providing specialized engineer functionality and improving customer workflows. Edmundo is responsible for demonstrating, teaching, and deploying bridge solutions to customers in the United States and Europe, including recent acquisitions and implementations of Autodesk's Bridge suite of projects for the Montana Department of Transportation. He is also responsible for Autodesk's traffic/mobility simulation solutions in North America, Argentina, and the Middle East, with graduate studies in micro-simulation traffic engineering at the MIT campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Edmundo constantly develops specialized techniques and solutions for the bridge construction, maintenance, and planning sections at the Department of Transportation in order to expand Autodesk's presence beyond the traditional design engineering division.
Yes, okay. First of all, thank you, Conconcreto, for the invitation. Yes, okay, so mobility simulation, transportation is mathematical modeling of transportation networks. It is critical for city planners, traffic engineers, as it provides visual feedback on extremely complex network behaviors under current demand and future demand. It also studies the interaction between pedestrians, trucks, any type of vehicles, including motorcycles, bicycles, and then how they interact and imagine a compressible fluid and then all the particles talking amongst themselves. That's what it is. It's highly complex, but it you have to understand, it helps you understand, really facilitate and provide constant flow and reducing traffic congestion. Transportation modeling is really about computing the benefit. Benefit measured in delays, in queue lengths, number of stops to reduce carbon dioxide.
Can you? Hello? Yes? So I think simulation, it's a very powerful concept that using the tools that today we have on place allows us to improve our behavior as a community, as a human being, in a proper way. So basically, simulation is you have an effect in the life. You have a behavior of a human, a behavior of a truck, and this behavior is ruled by several mathematic patterns. So you understand this behavior, you put that behavior into a mathematical way to express it, and with this mathematical way that with this tool that you use to reflect what is happening, you predict the future. So for example, you have a wife. Your wife behaves in a certain way. So you do a mathematical expression to behave your wife. So now that you have that mathematical expression, you are able to predict what she's gonna do next weekend. You know, so this is, so if you go out with your friends and your wife becomes angry with you, so you have a mathematical expression that says once you go with your friends, your wife is angry. So you can predict what is going to happen in the future when you go again with your friends. So that's simulation, but in a more complex way.
Great. And what kind of data is used to run these simulations?
What kind of data is
What kind of data is pulled to be able to run them?
So you predict the future based in the quality of two things. The quality of the information you get to build the model, and in the quality of the model by itself. So as much you check that model with your wife, as better is your prediction in the future. So that's why, it doesn't mean that as much data you have is as better. It means that you have to choose the proper data and according to the level of the model that you are developing. So huge models with small data predict worse. It's a bad prediction. Small models, very simple models with a regular quantity of data gives you a much better prediction.
Okay, it is to create a model. Model based on what? Transportation networks. So it's roads, number of lanes, it's turning movements, it is signalization, traffic light patterns, defacing the groups, the greens, ambers, yellows, and of course reds. It's all that data is simultaneously modeled. Plus, of course, and the most important data is the annual average daily traffic. That is the most important thing when you are analyzing a transportation network. What it means, it's the volume of traffic divided by 365, and based on that, it gives you the peak hour traffic data that you need to model to, of course, contemplate the worst case scenario. Every single state in the United States holds that AADT value that you can plug it into a matrix, and it gives you the true behavior at the worst time or the peak hours.
Let me complement that. I think today governments, municipalities, counties, states, and national governments, they are much more concerned about taking proper data and using that data. So we can see through a lot of initiatives how they are measuring and registering that specific ratios that Edmundo was saying right now.
Super interesting. And when modeling traffic patterns, from your experience, how do these simulations affect, let's say, a public transportation line and its complexity to different modes of its connection to different modes of transportation, such as pedestrian traffic and other kinds of traffic?
Yeah. So we've seen during the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of initiatives all over the world trying to connect different modelings that describe, each of them describe different behaviors of different transportation. So we say that multi-modal models. This is the technical name. Those models, what they do is, I am able to predict the behavior of the bus, the behavior of the airplane, the behavior of the pedestrians, and I put all of these behaviors together in order to see their interaction and in order to predict how can I manage them much more efficient. We've seen that, for example, those models are very, very usual in airports, for example, where you have trains, you have buses, you have taxis, you have Uber, you have planes by itself, and people moving around. Those studies are super important because, let me give you an example. The Madrid International Airport, T4, the new terminal. When they start designing that terminal, the base of the design of that multimodal system was done based in predictions for the next 25 years. When the terminal was finished, the citizenship did not understand why so huge terminal was done, and why the train station below the airport was so huge, was done in that way. Today, 10 years later, we now understand. We've seen how those models became reality and how actually the size of the terminal is being used properly. These predictions help the government to invest and to avoid further investments because of unexpected use of the multimodal terminal.
Okay, so for bus routes, train station routes, there's an open mobility database that anywhere in the world you can plug it in. So you plug in this, all these traffic, bus routes or train routes, you can plug it into your model. Automatically you have the stops and the existing routes. Then, for example, in Manatee County, what we did is, we combined that with the frequency, with the timetable of, these bus services, and then you run the simulation. It doesn't have to be at a peak hour. You can run simulations throughout 24 hours, months, years. You can certainly do it that way. But of course, when you do bus frequencies, it's within a 24-hour period. You plug in all the timetables, and then you automatically start seeing the levels of service. So the highway capacity manual has, level of service A through F. If it's E or F, that's collapse of the network. So you can see all the bus stops, that are going to be collapsing, and you evaluate, okay, so I need more frequencies or not. If they are, extremely empty, or you don't have as many people, and you can visualize this in a contextual, one single model, georeference model. So you evaluate and you optimize which frequencies are needed or which frequencies need to be more apart. That saves so much money, and that's really planning, public transportation with microsimulation.
Wonderful. And we typically hear about how companies are moving towards the creation of self-driving cars and Tesla's autopilot and all of that. How does the introduction of self-driving cars into the daily use of people, how would it influence the creation of forward-looking solutions?
So I think today we are living a very interesting moment in history, because all of us are connected through a mobile phone, and we are sending our location, we are sending our intention every single minute to a cloud. So with that, what I mean to say is that when you take a car and you put your GPS and the Google Maps or Apple Map tells you where to go, which street you have to go in order to get to your point, you are sending your intentions to a cloud. So this information allows or will be super powerful to governments or to companies that compile all of that and are able to understand what's happening in each moment in a specific region of the city. So when you have that information and you add the cars that are able to move by themselves, you are going to be able to use those streets or those areas that are less dense at some specific moment, and drive or lead those cars through that area. So at the end, what we are foreseeing is that governments, using partnerships with those companies that have the information, will be able to use much more efficient all the current infrastructure, and will be able to manage better and offer to the citizenships a better quality life through them.
Okay, I honestly believe that fully automated vehicles are not going to exist ever. It is going to be a coexistence of humans and, of course, very controlled, autonomous vehicles. Yes, we know about what China is doing. They have, they made inroads in, semi-autonomous vehicles, and it's going to be moving forward. However, I truly believe that, yes, those will exist and eventually will take, place into our transportation networks. But, there's got to be huge infrastructure to start limiting, for freight. I see it for freight concept in the future, okay? Moving in a very, very controlled environment. So it is the coexistence between humans and the very controlled, autonomous vehicles that are going to, of course, alleviate densities, and of course, they're going to increase the level of service. It's going to be much, much better, especially with humongous freight transportation systems like trucks, of course, but it's got to be controlled. There's got to be heavy investment in infrastructure to start limiting and minimize the risk of any accidents between autonomous and humans.
So would you say that they would be in a separate sort of infrastructure, or would it be more of a combination between human-driven transportation and autonomous transportation in the same region?
Like HOV lanes. That's the way I see it, okay? That's exactly the way I see it. You run by them, but of course there's got to be a barrier wall. It's like HOV lanes right here on 95, right? 95 north or south. That's exactly the way I see it. But of course, it's got to be infrastructure just to limit that. I saw once, an example that an autonomous vehicle, a person had to stop sign on his back, and then they stopped. So, just that factor is not going to be able to do it. You got to be really careful and really, really start building infrastructure for that. I see it, of course. It'll come that way, but it's like, what we see now as HOV lanes here in 95.
Wonderful.
Or the state of Florida, for that matter.
Super interesting. And since we're talking more about future and forward-looking solutions, we often hear AI is the future. How could AI learn from these simulations and all of the patterns that you input into it and be integrated into city infrastructure to better on-ground traffic in a more simultaneous way?
I mean, I believe the AI, it's a very powerful tool for governments, as I said before, because data is there. At any moment, at any specific time, governments have all the information to know what's going on in any space of their city. So connecting that with a tool that it's able to take decisions instantly, it's a very powerful tool to improve the service that a city is giving to its citizenships. For example, rush hours going to Brickell in Miami. So if you as a city read all the information that Google Maps or that Apple, it's recording through all the GPS, and you are able to control the lights, you are able to control the police, you are able to control the exits in and out of all the highways, you are going to be able, through a very easy AI model, to take decisions about how to manage the lights, how to manage the access, and being able to improve the service of the quality service that you are offering to your citizens. So I think this is not a NASA thing. It's a very, the tools are there already. I think the information is, of course, there. I think what is needed is more a leadership to organize and a leadership to put that in place. And actually, we've seen specific movements in that way. City of Coral Gables, for example, it's recording all the projects that are done in BIM modeling, and they are locating all the models in their GIS platform, and you can access to that information at any time. So I'm pretty sure that the cities in South Florida are very concerned about the problem, and they are aware of the solution, and they are taking steps towards that kind of solutions.
Yeah, along those lines, I see the artificial intelligence being a key part in traffic lights. Okay, so what it does is, it scans which lanes are empty in it, and then the facing switches, from, of course, complete stop to a yield or a go mode. So all those, intelligent decisions that traffic signals can make, that's where I foresee artificial intelligence. Now, can you model it? Can you prove, to the state or, yes, of course, to the state or, city planners that this is indeed much more efficient? You can, because in microsimulation engineering, you can place controllers at the intersections, and controllers, they say, okay, if there is a gap, or if this lane is unoccupied, then switch the traffic signals. So immediately they see the benefits. Why? How is it measured? By computing the level of service. So if it's a level of service A through C or D, it's good. It's much better. The improvement is better. So there's ways to prove it using multimodal simulation by placing controllers.
Wonderful. And Daniel, you've mentioned the occupants and the citizenship of a city several times already. What would you say is the role of the occupant in all of this? In moments where efficiency and the comfort of the population clash, how would one go about finding the balance between the two?
At the end, in infrastructure, you are trying to improve the quality of the life of people, you know? Either if you are designing or building an airport, developing a highway, doing a train station. So this is the final goal. However, you can do that. You can do that with a time frame that it allows you to do an investment with a size that it's available and it's real for the city or for the state, or you can do that in steps in order to go towards your goal. What I mean with that is that if you have a plan for 20 years as a city or as a county, and you want to improve the quality of your citizens towards specific level of service, you have to do the proper investment in the proper moments. To do that today, it's much more easy because the data available it's very accurate because all the mobile phones, for example, provides you location, timing, behavior. So the quantity of information that we have in order to check our models and in order to teach our AI, it's a powerful tool that governments must use in order to take those decisions to decide where to put the investment and how to do that.
Okay, the way I see it is, of course, you're not going to be able to resolve and make everything in a constant flow. I mean, space is limited, and there's so many variables, but that really would affect the frustration or the satisfaction of users. However, what you can do in order to balance this is, really compute, and that's what microsimulation does. It computes levels of service at the intersections, and granted, not everything is going to be constant, not everything is going to be level of service A, but of course, then you would say, okay, so on this major leg of the intersection, I'm going to have a level of service C, on this one B, so as long as for the plan and the master plan for 20-25 years holds a level of service C, which could be spread it out throughout all the parts of the intersection, you'd be fine. So it's balancing all the levels of service within the single intersection, so that the combination of all of them would give you at least a B or C in the long run.
Okay, so all of these forward-thinking solutions require forward-looking visions, and city officials and developers sometimes have differing visions for the development of their cities. How would one take such differences into account when running simulations to find solutions for the future?
Both of them have that same goal, which is improve quality life. The way to measure that quality life is the main difference. Developers have a specific understanding of quality life. Users has another. Politics has other. But at the end, you need that. As I said before, you need that leadership from my perspective, from the government, from the industry, from a multimodal platform that allows to everybody to go to a standard of quality life, of level of service. And based in that goal, that as a community you decide, the technical team is today able to take the proper decision in order to arrive there. So I think, as we mentioned before, today the quantity of data, the quantity of tools that we have are amazing. The main problem is the human side. So you have as we were discussing before, you have amazing tools. The problem, or not the problem, the issue is how is to have the proper leadership in order to use that tool into the construction or into the project. Here we have the same situation. We have an amazing tools ready to go. We have millions of data, quality data. What is needed is the proper leadership in order to get a consensus between the community and work towards the same goal. It's the human side. What is not a problem, but what is the key element in order to advance as a society. And you can see the cities where, or the utility companies or the utility providers that have a strong leadership or a strong union between the private side, the industry, the government, the academia. Those places where you see that kind of leadership of union are the regions that are able to advance faster in the improvement of their urban services or transportation services.
I agree. I think communication is paramount between, the developers and the city. Of course, they should, communicate much more efficiently, meaning that, established routes so that they produce the minimal impact during construction. Exactly understand where all the concrete trucks are going to be. This happens in the Army all the time, where, specific gates, the planning of the construction trucks at, critical times. So they should say, this is the best time, this is the best window, these are the routes that you should take in order for both of us to beneficiate, for sustainability, improvement, maintain at least the level of service, which, hardly is done, and then it's really very complex. Same thing happens when you shut down lanes, or where you do maintenance of traffic. When you shift traffic, nobody really plans, and then guess what? Bottlenecks everywhere. So just like, what is it Franklin and Churchill said? What is it? Failing to plan is planning to fail. That's exactly the same thing with microsimulation.
So,
Let me complement something. The good news, coming back to the idea of the leadership and human, the good news from my perspective is that in the USA, the ADN of the people, I mean, the way, the culture of the Americans allows, from my perspective, and I've been living in Europe, in South America, in Russia, in the USA. The Americans are, since we are, and I'm speaking we as an American already, since we are very freedom-oriented people, we respect the other freedomship. So this cultural thing allow us to feel free to discuss directly to the other. So I've seen here developers speaking with cities speaking with academia with the industry, in a way much more open than in any other way, in any other place of the world. So if you go to Europe, for example, you have a code, you have a rule, a specific rule for all over the country. So it's very, very difficult to have a discussion between a developer and a building official or academia with a developer in order to improve how that code is applied to a specific problem. Because the mindset of Europeans or other places all over the world, it's, even though you may say that are more open, but their mindset is more like a following the rules. However, here, you can see sometimes how a city is joining forces with academia in order to improve some specific problem. Or a city is discussing sit-downs with the developer in order to join forces for a specific problem or to improve a specific part of the city. So my perspective, after all my experience, is that the culture of the Americans, it's one of the most important assets that the USA have, because it allows the Americans to join forces towards specific problems and do it better.
okay, so these cities with a strong union between academia, leadership, and the private sector, can you think of any examples of these cities that have been more responsive to the creation of, to usage of these solutions that you have found through simulating and having highly detailed data?
So I think Edmundo has a broad experience all over the world. I think you've been working in Japan, in...
Yes.
Can you give us...
Yes, of course. Okay, so let's say, for airports, just like you were mentioning, in airports in New Zealand, it was critical to compute the necessary number of agents. So, at counters during the peak hours so that the network, the complete airport wouldn't collapse. That's one thing. Let's say, in an airport, another scenario, airport doesn't want to invest hiring more people, okay? Then we can compute the maximum capacity up to these many people can withstand, all the outgoing or incoming flights. Those were done in New Zealand. Okay, another one. For example, Vancouver Airport. Who would have thought that all those carts on runways, right? You see those carts. Now, there was a big problem in Vancouver. I worked with Vanderland in the Netherlands, saying, what in the world is happening? A lot of planes are not leaving on time. So we started studying why are they not making it in time, and believe it or not, it was because bags were not, being delivered on airplanes on time. So airports got fined. Also, what happens? Well, airlines had to, really push it when they were up in the air to try to make up the time lost. So it was a traffic simulation of all these carts that made a difference. Said you need another point. You need another point of delivering baggage at critical times. Vancouver does that. Orlando. If you go to Orlando Airport, they just got a piece of paper saying, go here, and that's it. There's no planning. And of course, this will, propagate. The problem propagates throughout time. In China, the train station that, you might have seen on the video. In China, it was, at a station from 7:50 to 8:20. They had a big problem, because the platform was collapsing. We had to analyze the number of extra trains that needed to be delivered. Instead of 5 minutes, 3 were on time. Another critical one, airports in San Andres in Colombia. 5 planes, a mess on the runway. People were even standing on the runways trying to even, just to go through customs. And then they tried everything. They tried, even they were thinking about building other buildings, to withstand the flow of people. It was just a matter of diverting, believe it or not, one flight, which wasn't the huge, the flight that contained the most passengers, that you had to divert it, and it worked. So there's, many more things. Egress simulations. When you turn in any architectural project, the first set of plans are what? Egress plans. But they're based on what? On the construction code. Where's the reality on that? Because it's based on what? On width of stairs, width of doors, in walkways. That's it. With micro simulations, say, okay, here we go. So, there's an emergency, which also applies in airports. Then you compute all, from all at peak hours, or, the most number of people at a specific place. Once the alarm goes off, then you compute up to the last person that leaves the building. Because what happens if it's more than 3 minutes? Then you endanger people. Egress simulation is taking more and more and more, more force in this. And of course, the Manatee County, which we already talked about, that was the bus routes, the train stations, and in San Juan in Argentina, fatalities. 2 fatalities per month, okay? Because, people wouldn't stop, would not really obey the traffic signals. So we fixed that, by placing roundabouts. And then instead of 2 per month, it was about 3 a year. So it was drastically reduced, just placing roundabouts. And so many more examples.
So I think we're running out of time, so
Okay.
we can move on to Q&A. Any particular questions?
So very interesting thought-provoking discussion. I very much appreciate it. Now, my question is for a detailed simulation. How do you handle a uncertainty? So you mentioned the people's behavior, right? The airline delayed on arrival or departure. Also, there are human factors that create some uncertainties. So haphazardly, something happens. And so I think I understand that your simulation uses sort of a range of targets. You want to achieve this between this and this, but there is also something unpredictable to happen, and that unpredictability could depend on the culture. So something could happen in Japan, may not happen in China, vice versa. So to develop something that is sort of globally applicable, simulation models. So how do you handle those uncertainties?
Thank you for your question. So when you create microsimulation, there's agents. Every single agent has a behavior before you create it. In behavior, you put aggressiveness, and then you also place, the walking speed, during just normal times, and then you can run a variation based on statistics. So you can place all this. You can create behaviors based on the country, and then you plug them into your, into the profile which controls the origin destination matrix. And it creates those trips. Absolutely, it's called behaviors in microsimulation.
Let me complement a little bit. So there is models to predict the unexpected thing. Today we have statistics, we have data, we have mathematical tools in order to predict what is not predictable. The point is that if you open the range of unpredictable things, you increase the investment that you need in order to be able to support that unpredictable scenario. So the question is how big you want to be protected, and how big or small you want to invest in the facility that you are designing. It's almost impossible to go to the 100% possible scenarios, because you will have to invest, a huge amount of money in something that is not necessary. I don't know if you've read a book named Black Swan. I recommend, because it's super interesting about it's a very interesting book about the unexpected things, and how we are as a community, how we are handling the unexpected situations.
Just to add more color on that, and just to wrap it up on your question is, Autodesk, we developed a project, a pilot project with the city of Atlanta. Of course, everybody talks about vertical BIM, right? Hardly anybody talks about horizontal BIM. That's exactly what traffic engineering does. It computes all the levels of service on multiple intersections. It also, traces the critical routes that, you have to take, and existing, routes. But also what you can do is synchronize all those traffic lights. How many times are we frustrated because they are not in sync, right? So you can foresee all these and then take a step, towards a complete horizontal BIM, making it function as a dynamic entity.
Thank you.
I think everybody can 10%, approximately 10% of building construction costs.
Thank you.
The logistics of moving materials within a site. I'm not even talking about shipping across the country, just moving the stuff, taking drywall, putting it up, things like that. Are there platforms that could perhaps mesh in
One critical model that I was showing, it was, the Vancouver airport. It's all freight simulation. So yes, you say, okay, I'm going to transport it from here to here. Amazon is actually using, the robotics and all the shipment
path, different solutions to solve this problem. In the case of Conconcreto, what we did is we locate GPS cuts in the helmet of all workers. So taking that data about where the people is during all the time of the construction allows us to understand better the path, the timing of the different labor and different workers in the construction, and allow us to take decisions in a sense to, for example, improve the safety conditions of the construction, defining a specific path to move through the construction. This is one of the solutions that we implement. As I said, I am aware that most construction is doing something similar also. Another thing that we develop in that sense, very interesting thing, that we learn from a broader company named Vinci, which is one of the biggest construction companies all over the world. They understood that in the construction site, logistics are critical because a lot of value is lost thanks or motivated by a problem in logistics in the construction. And they understood that the key element in the construction is the tower crane. So you may say, okay, this is obvious, Danny. The tower crane is the element. But it's not the problem is not to have the biggest tower crane or to have the largest tower crane. The problem is to decide where the tower crane is moving every minute. So they develop a culture or a system based in how an orchestra is playing. So in the orchestra you have 50 people, 50 big and amazing musicians. Each of them have their own knowledge about their own instrument, but if you don't coordinate all of them a specific timing, you will listen something horrible. If you make it work at a specific time in each of them, you will listen an amazing music. So they understood the construction logistics in that way. So what they did is, I'm referring to Vinci, and then Conconcreto also learned about that. What we did is plan every single minute of the construction of the timing of the tower crane. So for example, if at 9 a.m. 10 minutes, the tower crane has to have the hook in the second level of the building C to carry reinforcement and to move it to building A, third level. So we define a schedule for every single minute of the tower crane, and we create a culture in the site in order to make people understand that the fulfilling the timing is critical in order to listen the music. And of course, applying rules of control and different strategies. But my main point is that logistics today in the site are critical in order to improve efficiency. There is a huge value lost because of lack of organization in the logistics, and big companies, as for example Vinci, Moss Construction, or Conconcreto, are aware of that and are using technology in order to solve that.
Edmundo, you mentioned life safety design and the simulation, and I'm very interested in how you think that it should change, because in looking at the history of how those things actually, the code, how it's interpreted, you mentioned stair widths, door sizes, and whatnot, and I know that those decisions are made on past experiences. Some building that burned in New York in the 1920s, and X amount of people died, and so those decisions carry a history to it, and they're just not codes. How do you think that simulation would change, the life safety design? Because it's already sort of like, you know, the information that you feed into a simulator is very important. Whatever you feed into it could trigger something totally different than what you're expecting. So.
Okay, so you might have seen on the video, you can run simulation even on a napkin, okay? Really, believe it or not, if you scale it correctly, it's got to be 2D, as simple as, you know, 2D drawings. You take a picture, and then you build a model on your stories. Or, you know, you can bring in a model from Revit. Good. From there, you know, you work backwards. You say, okay, this amount of people, this is the maximum amount of people at a given time. Okay, then you place, of course, you know, the walkways where they would move. Of course, you know, like the gentleman was saying, there's an aggressiveness factor as this is an emergency, okay? Then you evaluate, for example, and I had it up there where you can say, I only had one set of stairways. I only had one. The timing was 15 minutes for all of the people, for the last one to evacuate. Then you evaluate, okay, same demand, same number of people with another escape route. Then, you know, it came down to 1 minute and 20, that much amount. But, you know, of course, you have to really take into account which are the walls. So you have to, floor by floor, construct, you know, the way they would move up to, you know, the escape route. And from the escape route, then you start seeing that the first floor leaves, then, you know, starts spawning up at the 5th floor, and because, you know, they're waiting for, you know, the people to evacuate. So if you really demonstrate, you know, to your, you know, to the county or to your client, okay, guess what? I'm not only going by the code, which doesn't take into account, you know what? You know, of course, emergency, speed, and then of course, you know, the factor of people gathering at, you know, at critical times, also the walkways, and then the escape routes. This is the time that it would take up to the last person. So it's modeling with walls and all that, you know, taking, of course, they can't move through walls. Then you place this, you know, all the walkways, and then from the walkways, you simulate, you just give it a, you know, large period simulation, let's say like 2 hours. It's gonna take you less than that. And then all of them, you say, this is the origin, you go backwards. This is the origin, floor by floor. The destination is, of course, you know, the main exit. You compute the times, and then you have something to back it up in a much more realistic way. Make sense?
So I think that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much.
Computer scientist, and I have a master's degree in telecommunications, but I ended up running a construction company. And since the beginning, my challenge has been how to transform the construction in terms of digitalization and digital tools to improve productivity in the construction industry. 10 years ago, we came across the BIM standard, and we started using BIM tools. And we see this is the only tools available right now to increase productivity in the construction industry. There's close to 50% losses in productivity in the industry due to labor and lack of planning and lack of integration of designs. So we have been working for 10 years improving productivity, and we have many experiences, especially when the owner, the designer, the contractor, and the asset manager come together, and they look for strategies to improve productivity and to have less impact in the environment during the construction phase and also during the operation and maintenance phase. We are shareholders in one of the largest real estate funds in Colombia, and we have developed close to $500 million in assets that are sustainable and have been delivered on time and below budget. So we can prove it works. We're building right now a multifamily building in the city of Doral. And I would say it's probably the first building in Miami. We don't see more, or we don't know more. Probably there's more, but that will have 100% BIM standard, BIM tools, even during the construction phase. And we will have all the data for the operation and maintenance of the building in terms of traceability of all the materials that we're going to use there. So it's our second large project here in Miami, South Florida. And we believe that it's the only way to make construction more productive and have less impact in the environment.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jane Decker. I am a alum as well. And like Juan, I stumbled into my profession in the city of Doral, starting as an inspector, plans examiner, building code official, and now I'm the director and I run the department. So my goal is always bridging the gap between the AEC industry, the disconnect that always seems to take place. You know, we're not the obstructionists, we're not the bad guys, but we are behind in the implementation of technology. I think building departments as a whole, as a profession, as a career, it's so always an end stage. It's sort of end of life for the smaller contractors. You know, what are they going to do in retirement? We'll go review plans and do inspections and lead cities, and that's not the right conversation to have, right? So I'm encouraged about the conversation that we'll have today about how technology can improve everybody's efficiency and effectiveness in the field and for the life cycle of the building, because that's a conversation that's very relevant now, especially with Surfside. We've almost touched it in the first two sessions, but I'm eager to talk more about that and how it can better the future of our buildings in South Florida. Thank you.
Thank you all for that. So something that is extremely relevant to all of us right now is supply chain, some of the stresses that we're feeling, which is indicative of surges and peaks of supply and demand. You're all here representing kind of new and innovative building strategies, and I'm curious how some of these stresses might offer opportunity for you to offer alternatives for people who perhaps cannot get certain materials at the same price or same accessibility that they previously have not been, and how also perhaps municipalities can offer certain guidances to direct people to some of these alternatives as they find difficulty in acquiring some resources.
Definitely. As a manufacturer of new technology here, I can definitely tell that we have been quite impacted by supply chain issues, our own supply chain issues, in that we've gone from approximately 3 months of production lead time to around half a year. So it takes a long time to actually manufacture these. Not made easier, of course, by the Ukraine crisis. But what we see on our client side, so basically all the contractors out there, is that they really embrace this new technology. Why? Well, because of automation. So I read some numbers from the US Census Bureau a few weeks back that said in the States alone, in which there is a 4 million home gap, 80% of contractors now have issues finding skilled labor on site. So it's not just materials. Materials are also an issue, but also labor in general. So those two combined make that 80% actually postpone projects because they can't get these materials and they can't find skilled hands. And that's sort of where our technology, it comes in and helps in that it reduces, it goes in and reduces the acute, you could say, labor shortage there is of skilled hands on site.
I would say that our industry is the least productive, as I mentioned, and there's been a loss of productivity in labor in our industry. It's 35% in the past 30 years. Compared to the labor in all the economy, which has increased 40% in the past 30 years. So we need automation, we need digital tools to improve productivity. In the past conference, they were speaking about the planning and the orchestra strategy that was developed, and Vinci is our largest shareholder, is the largest construction company in the world outside of China. And what they do is the planning of all the materials inside the project, but also the supply chain. And since probably 3-4 years ago, we started developing Bimbao. Bimbao is a corporate startup, and Juan Alejandro will speak about it later,
to improve the supply chain and the planning of all the materials that go into a project. In the U.S. only, the construction materials sector is $390 billion per year. That's a huge amount of money that we invest in construction materials. And the logistics exists, but not the planning of the supply chain of the procurement. So the first step to improve productivity is planning the supply chain, how do we acquire the materials, and where they come from, and what is the CO2 footprint of these materials, and how we improve logistics. There's a lot of waste of time due to the logistics and the procurement of the materials. So we are working on that. Sustainable materials, but also the logistics of the materials, which also have a high impact in the environment.
Just to add to Juan Luis, something important in Bilbao now is we understand that the main problem is the actor in construction, they don't speak each other. I mean, the designer is apart, the supplier are apart, and also the subcontractors. The only way that we can have a really good supply chain is if we combine all the effort and the idea to what we're gonna do, and not only what we're gonna do at what time, which material are we gonna use to make our building better. Bilbao is that solution. That's the way that we are bringing all together, not only to find the way to make the project faster, and also cheaper, but also to bring all the opportunity to all the people who want to be part of the construction, be part of the solution. Also, something important is every time that we bring a technology, we need to teach or to bring the technology to all the people. Especially with suppliers, when we talk about bigger supplier, they know pretty well about BIM, but mainly all the products came from small suppliers or vendors. That means that we need to teach them what is BIM, how to use it. And this is also something important every time that we bring a solution. BIM will also help them to improve what they offer, bringing to them the solution of BIM, what is BIM and why it is important. Once they know about it, we can also work then in the supply chain and also in the connection with the project and how to bring materials and make this process better. Now sustainability is also an important issue that we can help them to bring that solution, make them more competitive, even if we compare with biggest or bigger suppliers.
Yeah, I can build on that a little bit too. And maybe taking one step back for a moment, I'm not sure who all the audience is, if we're all architects, designers, business, whatever, but I think it's important to talk about, the explanation of like the digitization. And so when we think, that can be one thing where as designers, we're building a digital model, 3D in the computer, and then the idea of the BIM, how does that model communicate to those that are manufacturing it and that are actually then, once it's manufactured, who's constructing it on site. And so I think your point is spot on. Not only how do we link those trades on site, so if you're a contractor, you have to figure out how are we going to get our, concrete guy to think about where our electrical plugs are going to go. But now it's broadening that spectrum and saying, how do we get our designers to think about, how that's going to be made, and actually, how is that manufacturing and making part of the design process anticipated, and so that when it comes to site, that communication's already happening. And so going back to the supply chain question, some very specific examples are when you're prefabricating something and then it comes to site, you have tolerances that can be anticipated. And so we worked on a prefabricated project recently where on the same day, I was signing off on the shop drawings for the CLT panels and signing off on all the doors and the windows, because I knew that those panels were going to be fabricated to 1/16 of an inch tolerance. And so then I could also sign off on the windows and doors. So then when it arrived on site, the windows and doors went in the next week versus, often when we're working with CMU and we can't, we're not in a position for hold to tolerances, we may have a 3 or 6 months, delay now that we're talking about
windows and doors used to be 3 months, now they can be 9 months. So I think that kind of anticipating that building process in the design can help short circuit a little bit of the supply chain issues.
Yes, we do have. I do have another comment. We have a mining operation within Medellin, the second largest city in the country, in Colombia, and I would say that is probably the most sustainable mining, aggregate mining operation in Latin America, which is where we know most of the mining operations, and we have done it using BIM. And using a lot of technology, digital technologies. So we started improving the amount of energy that we use in the mining operation, and only operating the mine in the low peak consumption times of a day. Even at night, we operate the mining. But we also use solar energy. And we also use recycling of all the mud and all the waste that we get from the mining operation. We recycle 98% of the water. So doing that, we are making sure that the materials that are used for concrete, premix concrete in Medellin, the city, are sustainable because they only travel 20 to 30 kilometers and are mined using sustainability purpose in our company. So I would say that we have to change the way we do construction, but we also, as material providers in our case, we have to think about how we do the operation of all the materials that are used in construction. I think there's a purpose in many companies. Many companies speak about sustainability, but you have to start changing all the economic sectors and make sure that people, especially young people, young students that come out of the universities, start thinking about sustainable ways of doing the materials and also doing construction.
I would just add too that when you're incorporating new ideas, new technologies, new materials, and from an AHJ perspective, understand the difference between prescriptive and performance codes and what the intent of the code is and how to achieve something so that everybody's happy, whether it's developer, owner, end user, and the AHJ.
So to build on that a little bit, as some of these technologies are providing information that can be transferred between team members, how is BIM modeling and other digitization tools opening certain lines of communications and also facilitating a dynamic between suppliers, designers, and contractors? And how might that affect people's design decision making during the process and perhaps sway them one way or another depending on certain availabilities?
We started using BIM because there was a challenge in our company. We're probably the largest, we have been the largest construction company for almost 10 years in Colombia. And our challenges was sitting down in the table, all the designers. It sounds simple and easy, but every time there's an issue in any of the designs, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, structural, whatever, you have to change all the other designs or make little changes. But to get that in a fast and easy and accurate way would take days or weeks. So what we did in Conconcreto is we started an engineer and architecture division in which we hire experts in all the disciplines, but we didn't have the tool. So we started using BIM as the standard, the tool, but what we did is we made a cultural change within the organization, and that is what BIM is about. You have to have all the people involved in a construction project sitting in the same table, having the same language, and being integrated, looking for the faster, easiest, and less cost in the construction process and in the operation and maintenance process. And we also need, as Jane mentioned, we need more regulations in terms of operation and maintenance. Our industry, construction industry, taking into account the operation and maintenance of buildings and infrastructure, We are the largest users of energy in the world and resources. And there's no codes for that. I mean, there's no code to use lighting that uses less energy or water that is being recycled. I mean, it's an initiative from companies or from users or from the owners of the buildings. It's not there's no legislation about that, and we need to see a change in that.
Speaking to your first point on putting everybody together in the same room and having them speak together when it comes to these BIM models, well, that's exactly what we see when we're out there 3D printing, because it all, I brought a sample here today. It all looks very nice and neat to have a 3D printed building. But in order to get there, you actually need to sit everybody together, the designers and architects, the builders, the suppliers. Everybody in that room sits together, and then we have a look at the 3D printed file together and say, okay, here's where we want electrical sockets. Here can we reduce actually the wall thickness to reduce the material use. Here we want to have rebar reinforcement to ensure that we comply with local regulation. So the fact that everybody can now sit together in a meeting room beforehand, but also on site, and discuss, okay, how are we actually going to do this building, and then let the printer do the job afterwards, is completely groundbreaking. And just a small other note here, we can actually do all the changes on site 5 minutes before we start the printing process. So if there's anything, any room, any door, a door opening, whatever, plumbing, MEP we want to change, we could do that on site. And we just have all come together, all contractors, the architect, the builders, etc., and then we discuss how would that actually affect the process. And it really unlocks so many benefits that you described before.
In addition, I think the technology now is designed to connect all the people. I mean, every time is even more open than before. For example, everything related with Revit or Autodesk, every time you see a different solution that bring all people together, I don't imagine any other technology that they don't call to all the people to be together. From my point of view. In terms of how the technology can help people to connect, I think, as I said before, is a must, okay? And then you can see with BIM, it's a reality. We saw during all these 2 days examples of something that is really happening right now, but only works if the people are together communicating each other. My main concern or challenge right now is the quality of the information that we are managing, which is something really important that we have to work. And it still is something that we are missing, but we have to work on that, and I think we're gonna get it at the end.
I would add, sorry, I would add that a BIM model is a database. It's a database. We see it as a 3D presentation of a building, but it's a complex database which has a lot of information about materials and about timing and costs and sustainability and operation and maintenance. So the richer the data is in the database, the better decisions we can make about construction or operation and maintenance of the asset. What we're doing at Conconcreto, and together with Inbao, is we are creating our own database of 3D models, which has a lot of metadata. And we're focusing a lot in sustainability, because there's no place in the world where you can find, for example, the carbon footprint of a lamp or of any construction material. It's very hard to get that information, or the energy consumption. So we're trying to build with the suppliers of the industry in construction to start building a database with all the information. And with that, we want to have kind of a standard of the way we manage BIM objects to build BIM models, and how this information can be shared. And that's the final or the biggest purpose of BIMBAO, is having all the information for cities, for universities, for suppliers, for general contractors, about how the industry is more or less sustainable in terms of the materials we use.
I love the idea of the sort of carbon database that's, you know, embedded in these material or these objects that we then may select to design with. And I want to come back to that, but to the original question, it makes me think of a past experience where we were, you know, like universities now basically, you know, they want you to use Revit just for the BIM, for the knowledge, the integration. And we were at a point when I was practicing in Boston and left where the facilities, you know, wanted the BIM model when we were done. And so they were actually also willing to make decisions in the design process to say, let's have MEP model everything, you know, structure typically models everything, you know, so for that clash detection that Philip mentioned, but they wanted, you know, the thorough model so that facilities could use it as a sort of maintenance and managing, you know, tool, which I thought was amazing and it's very, you know, sophisticated. And so I'm wondering, Jane, how that might, you know, change, you know, the way that you guys sort of think or require, you know, you brought up Surfside and we talk about these 40-year certifications, and one of the conversations around that certification is how do we build that certification into the design process so it's not 40 years later and someone's trying to figure something out, but maybe they, you know, it's in this BIM model and then that sets them up for the future.
I think that those conversations are starting to happen now as a result of the tragedy. We've seen presentations on bots and RFID tags and all sorts of pieces of technology that can go into construction as it's being constructed, so that when the BIM model comes out for operations and maintenance, you have a live organism almost, so that you're seeing the settling points, or you're seeing energy inefficiencies, exposures to elements, all these sorts of things that will be really fascinating to watch over the next couple of years. Again, regulation and legislation hasn't caught up with it. We know that we're probably going to go to a 30-year recertification cycle, and then buildings closer to the water at a tighter timeline. But it's exciting to see what the youth will bring to the table.
Yeah, has it come so close to home where you've started to think about how you'll train, you know, your office and your staff to engage with these tools?
Yeah, so I mean, with the recertification program itself, we all know now that Broward and Dade are the only jurisdictions in the United States that have anything of this sort. You have some glazing recertification programs in the Northeast, but from a training perspective, you know, I'm very limited as an AHJ, right? So when I get a report, I'm relying on the accuracy of the data that I'm receiving, the competency of the engineers that are doing the recertification. We know we have a deficit in the structural industry. The electrical, you know, that's going through some changes, and those are the only two components that are looked at under the recertification program right now. It doesn't look at mechanical, it doesn't look at the piping, it's not looking at the rest of the building. So it'll be a challenge for us to train. It'll also be a challenge for us to staff, and you know, we're going to get a 10-year pipeline in July, possibly, where, you know, building owners are going to be put on notice. So it'll be interesting to see how we can partner with the private community, because that's just going to be a necessity at that point of how we complete the process.
I would like to add that we have another company in which we invested. Is a small company called Azimuth. And what they do is they're using IoT technology to put sensors into the buildings. And we're measuring, right now we're measuring energy consumption and water usage and heat usage. So the technology exists. So if you have the BIM model and you place the sensors all over the building and you can monitor them and check them, then you have all the data of a living organism. So we have the technology. So there has to be changes in regulations, or there has to be initiatives of the owners of the assets to put in place the technology, because that's what they need to operate and maintain the building. It's a lot of money is saved if you manage the building.
So in any building that we produce, as you mentioned, there's a carbon footprint to everything down to the specific lamps that are used. And as BIM technologies allow for the consolidation of that information and the specific quantification, aside from the specific carbon footprint that the material has, it also comes from somewhere, it's produced by somebody, and there's a certain amount of energy that is involved in actually getting it to the building. So I'm curious how the BIM modeling and digitization of these tools can start to expand that system boundary and understand some of the proximities that certain materials are being derived from, and also inform a certain appropriateness for materials that are applied. A sustainable material in one location like South Florida might not be sustainable in another based on the resources that are readily available.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, actually, what we do in BIMBAO is exactly that. I mean, we have the possibility to have all that information. As I mentioned before, the issue here, or the challenge, is to collect that information. We need to teach the suppliers all the sustainability index or measures, but also how BIM can help them to be more competitors every time that they have these indicators. What we do in BIMBAO, or what are we developing in BIMBAO, is the BIMBAO Sustainability Index, in which we can compare with all that information if the product is sustainable or not. Also, we have something related with the location of the project. We offer to the subcontractor, which is the closest material that they need in order to get the less CO2 emission. Not only the information of the product, but also the information about logistics and how the logistics can reduce the CO2 emission. At the end, what we are working is on traceability of all the materials that are included in every project that are using BIMBAO objects.
And what he didn't mention is that using BIMBAO, you can, when you search for a material, BIMBAO is a marketplace where you can just look for any construction material. And BIMBAO presents the materials the closest to the project. So we use the location of the site, construction site, to look for the closest materials for that site. And that's one thing that BIMBAO helps a lot, because we don't search, I mean, you can search by price, but you can also search by location.
As a follow-up, I want to say at Cobalt, we're going to look into how we can actually work, for instance, with BIMBAO, because I see some synergies here in that what our clients, what they do, and I want to say we've sort of locked down on concrete because it's a very good material to 3D print in, and it's very resilient and strong. But what our clients do is they always try to source as much locally, sand, cement, and gravel, of course. And then we can sit in with that BIM model and actually look, okay, this CAD file here, what's the material usage? And say we then attach that to the BIMBAO framework, in which we can then say, okay, if you use materials from this supplier, the total emissions are going to be this. However, if you go for these guys here, it's going to be this instead. So I think that would actually be interesting to discuss after the panel here.
Good. I have a challenge for you also. Oh, no. We built a no. We built a 3D printer in 2017, and we printed the first house in 2018. And right now we are printing the second house in Medellin. I offered the University of Miami that we would bring the printer here. Probably I'm going to get one from you. Because it's a technology that we have to experiment. I mean, I don't see printing houses as a massive solution for the construction industry. It's on the high end right now. It's beautiful houses, a lot of design, a lot of because it's not inexpensive. It's expensive. The printing with concrete is expensive. And I think we have to find new materials, and that is one of the things we would like to do. For example, biomass or fungus, or we have to find a more sustainable material and less. This weighs a lot. There's a lot of weight, and what we do in construction is we move weights. So the less the weight is in a building, the less the designs are, and probably the less is more sustainable. So I would say that this is a wonderful technology. It's going to become more and more used in construction, but we need new materials. This one is going to be very useful in some parts of the construction, but we need more materials with 3D printing.
I'll pick up on the material conversation. I know when we have our planning session for this panel, I mentioned that, that the way that the timber industry works now is you can track, a tree from where it grew, where it was logged, cut down, milled, and then manufactured into a building product. So you can very specifically understand, what was the embedded carbon footprint and then of course where that goes, as Reed already suggested, if it goes from, Dothan, Alabama to, New York, it's not going to be sustainable anymore. But if it, so there's a material regionalism that I think is critical. And I think the conversation about, the tools that you're developing, I think it's great that we're here at the University of Miami, but what I wonder is, how do we integrate that into a curriculum, because while we have to address profession, we have to address the future of our profession, right? And so just the questions that we're asking are great. We may not have all the solutions right now, like it's a step like where digitization helps reduce a footprint, but how do we continue to discover and explore that material question? But how do we even bring these questions, to the profession, I guess? Like what are your guys' strategies that way? Because I'm assuming that, having these tools has a cost, not everybody may have the luxury to use them, so how do we get these conversations sort of on a larger platform?
What we do, and I think it's a key question that needs to be solved for, what we do very tangible on our end is that we work a lot with academia and governments alike, for which we get grants to research new construction methods, in essence. So one thing that would be particularly interesting here in this state, in Florida, is how can we actually, for instance, 3D print seawalls, because this state is slowly, going underwater, and to really mitigate that, then you need a lot of seawalls along the coast. However, that is a lot of materials, right? That's a lot of concrete. So how can you optimize for topology in order to minimize the greenhouse gas emissions? And I think in order to get there, working with university, working with academia is super important. One thing that we do is, well, not only research, but also we try to upskill in general, to go out to universities and colleges and actually work with them. We do curriculum together with them, and it's then sort of a process that is continuous, in which we constantly update the curriculum and the training processes. And we learn so much from these university students because life hasn't beaten them down yet, and thus they have so many great ideas that all can basically leverage from.
But I would say that what Shauna was mentioning is that we need a change in our industry. And we did it at Conconcreto. We just reached, we got to 60 years in the market last year, and now our purpose is inspire a sustainable future. So what we're thinking at Conconcreto, at every level of the company, is being more sustainable. And I would say that for our industry, in which we build things that last 100 years, 50 years, in 50 years, they are going to question us for the buildings that we design and build. And the users of those buildings or infrastructure are going to question who built it and how it was built. So we need also from the economic perspective, we need to be more sustainable, because people are going to pay for sustainability, and a lot of money. So I think it covers all the ESG decisions of a company in terms of being more sustainable. It is going to make a lot of money for the companies also.
Something that we experimented in Colombia. I came from, as Juan Luis said before, we were born in Conconcreto as an employee. The first time that I went to startups and people who are working in startup, they are totally open to work in open source in a collective way. which is something that all the team learned about it, and now is our main tools that we bring to the students. We are trying to enter in universities in Colombia, bringing to them the possibility to also be part of the solution of Bimbao, because it's the best way to involve someone in the solution. Not only to bring to them just take all the objects in Bimbao and you can have a really good designs, but also how you can help to make this tool better. This is the way that we are bringing the academy to Bimbao, and I think it's a really good way to bring to them. Once you have all the people and the community focus on Bimbao, you can start to talk about sustainability, and not only that, what is the main challenge that Bimbao is having at the moment, and all that the students start to work with you. And I think the information and all the sustainability information that we miss right now is a really good example that we can bring to the academy and make the students be part of the solution.
So we've talked a lot about logistics, and if there's one thing maybe I can advocate for certain technologies like 3D printing, a lot of digitization tools are focused on providing specific machineries that allow for very expedient erection of materials. So Sean, I happen to know that you're very familiar with the size of a crane and the size of a truck that needs to house these materials, and gantry is a machinery that 3D prints has a very fixed dimension. And so all these things are logistical elements that can theoretically be coordinated through those BIM models, understanding how much of each material that you need. And as buildings go up, anybody who's driven through Miami, there's an incredible amount of building happening that has a very direct effect to people around the city. So from a municipal perspective, I'm also curious to know the kind of stresses that spikes in building have on logistics within the municipality, and how BIM modeling might be able to coordinate certain logistics between not only the job itself, but surrounding jobs, so as to alleviate some of those stresses.
Sure, we're seeing that right now. Obviously, Doral is one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. for the last 7, 8, 10 years. I've lost track. So we have a lot of requests. We've got 12 towers that are going up in downtown Doral. So obviously, as people move in, as citizens move in, taxpayers move in, people that have a say in government and have a voice and are very loud. The buildings are coming up. The contractor has a deadline to meet. He's using BIM, he or she. They're doing those logistic models. They come to the city. They say, well, we don't want to back up the school lines, right? Kids got to get to school. The truck route. Some cities have a truck route, so you've got to investigate their GIS maps, see where the truck routes are. And then you don't want cold joints in a concrete pour from time to time. So they are using BIM, and they are conversing with the city, so that we say, okay, we're going to make a concession. We're going to start the pour at 2 a.m. We're going to avoid the school traffic, avoid the traffic congestion, get the pours done right, so that way they meet their compression tests and everything else. So that's where BIM comes in for us, and having that conversation at the beginning is also from a standpoint of educating my staff, right? So we've gone from 2D paper to the 3D model. Everything is on the screen now. They don't have tactile paper to touch. So we've had clients come in, and I call them clients. They're our customers, but they're also my client. Jackson West was a great example. When they started that project 5 years ago, they brought the BIM model in for my team. And so when you rotate that and you show them, okay, these are where the conflicts are, we've already identified that, here's how we've met code in a certain capacity, that helps open our eyes. And so that's where BIM is useful for the municipality. We need to take it another step further for sure.
I wish we had a BIM model of a city. So that's what Bimbao is about. I mean, in 20 years, we will have probably 10, 15, 20% of the buildings built using BIM technology. But there's a challenge for humanity also. I mean, we have to do digital twins of all the buildings in the world if we want to manage them properly. And that's a huge task, and I think it's going to be done. They're starting with museums or with old buildings that have a huge value, such as this one. But at the end, we will have, there's going to be technologies. There's technology already to do digital twins of the buildings that exist currently. So I think using that and using data and simulations, as you were explaining in the past conference, we can see how a city is also a living organism. We have done it in shopping malls. We operate shopping malls in Colombia, so we track users of the shopping malls that come in and go out of the shopping mall with their cell phones. So we assume that where the cell phone spends the night is where they live, and where the cell phone spends the day is where they work. So we track how they move and how often do they pass in front of the shopping mall. There's technologies to do that, and there's data. There's a huge amount of data. I am sure that Google traces us and Waze traces us all over the city, what we do all day. With that technology, a city could plan how buildings interact between each other.
We actually already have some of that data. The city of Doral has 3 certifications from the World Council on City Data. One of those is the number of cars and vehicles that move in and out of the city. So, you know, we're a sleepy little town of 80,000 residents, but there's 100,000 cars that come into and out of a 14 square mile radius every day. So certainly, if we could leverage that data with your construction site, I mean, the world is our oyster at that point.
I think one more point too is the idea of logistics even being part of, you know, the design process, right? So again, from an architect's point of view, as we're designing through these digital tools and building information modeling, then we're thinking about fabrication. And it may not always be prefabrication, but if it is, then we know, you know, we can plan what are the components that are coming out of the factory. So whether it's precast concrete, whether it's CLT panels, we know, you know, what the sizes of those components are, where they're going to go into the building, if they're going to come on a truck, how are we stacking them on the truck, how are we picking them off the truck and putting them on the site, and where do they go, and what are the sort of tolerances and spaces we need for all that. So I think to the idea of building efficiency and building with less waste, as architects, if we start to engage those processes as part of our responsibility and accountability, it just helps everything down the line.
I can add that, well, BIM really allows our clients to 3D print on site. So if we compare that to precast, for instance, that actually allows for reducing the amount of reinforcement quite considerably in that building. And steel is, that's your go-to material for reinforcement. And you do so in precast elements because the tensile strength is approximately, so that's when you pull the material apart, is 10% of when the compression strength when you press it downwards. Now, when you actually move the precast elements around, it's needed, the reinforcement is needed to make sure that it doesn't become too brittle and it doesn't erode in essence. So by printing on site, you really circumvent, to some extent at least, the need for that greenhouse gas emitter, which is steel reinforcement. So, and that's all enabled by BIM technology.
My dream and our dream at Conconcreto is we would like to assemble buildings instead of doing construction. And I think 3D printing is one of the technologies that's going to help a lot. But it's crazy the way we do construction. I mean, if you compare it to the car industry or the airplane industry, it's like we are 100 years behind. So we have to change that also. We have to do more robotics, have more robotics, and have more larger elements that go into the building. Like we did it in Colombia for a hotel. We built the bathrooms, and we assembled the bathrooms away from the construction site, and we just brought them into place. So we have to change the way we do construction.
That's actually, it's interesting that you just bring that up because is building a building right next door to City Hall in Doral. And one of the things that we just met with them about, they're doing a prefab penthouse, mechanical penthouse. And so it is manufactured off-site. It will receive a rating like a one-time approval or a DBPR approval, and then it'll be brought on site and plug and play essentially. So to your point, like how do you affect change? How do you get change to happen? The building code is not written in stone. It's written in ink on paper and can be changed. So I would tell people that don't know, I would encourage you, join a TAC, join a technical advisory committee, get involved with the Florida Building Commission, get involved with your local agencies having jurisdiction, get involved with Miami-Dade County, be a voice and start those conversations because that's the only way that change will happen.
And I would say that we have to standardize construction a lot more, especially architecture. There's probably not more than 300 different cars in the world, or 50 different telephones. But every house is different from the neighboring house. So we have to standardize. We have to get used to having the same buildings. It probably won't look as beautiful as the cities right now, but the only way is to industrialize construction.
I agree with your first point, but on your last point on standardizing things, I'm actually not in agreement. And that's because, and I'm of course biased, but actually this technology does allow for creating buildings that are all unique at the same cost of doing it a rectangular shape that everybody right now lives, most of us at least, in a rectangular building, right? I think, and our goal is that everybody can actually own a unique home, which is at the same cost of doing it with conventional methods. But it's unique. It doesn't have to be a cookie cutter approach for every home, which I think would also make all cities around the globe much, much nicer to live in that everybody can have something which is just their own.
That's a good point. I agree. That's the technology that's going to change the world.
So I'll ask one more question and then we'll move to Q&A. When we talk about sustainability and resiliency in building, we often talk about the building, the materials, in the habitation post-construction, but what I think is talked about less frequently is quality of life. The construction industry is an incredibly physically demanding profession, and is it's very strenuous on the actual people that are involved in producing the building. So I'm curious how certain digitizations, robotics, even BIM model efficiencies are addressing quality of life for the people that are erecting buildings, and how that might be improving the industry in that way.
I would say that we are always going through a critical path in construction, and that is because of lack of planning and lack of design integration. So if we go back to digital tools, to BIM standard, and you plan ahead, probably 40–50% of the conflicts are going to go out, and you can work 9 to 5 and plan what you're going to do the next day, and you have a less stress and less demanding jobs for people in construction. But I think it's mostly about planning.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think in general in the industry there's been a major focus on digitalization, so the digital world, and less so on the physical world of construction, which is just as important also because it involves actual people on site. Of course, the way you help with implementing 3D printing is that you let the machine do the hard labor, and the rest you let the other contractors that would tend to go and move and do all the hard bricklaying work or stick framing, etc. They can stand on the side and just make sure that the machine is doing the job correctly at potentially also a higher paid job. So that's definitely one way in which technology helps the labor in construction.
From my point of view, in our case in Bilbao, first of all, I mean, all the processes in construction, actually even in US, the people is still working on paper. And this brings a lot of work after when you have to collect all the information. What Bilbao helps is to have everything done in one place. And I think we have also measured that we reduce 80% of operation issues in construction, which means more time for engineers and people on the job site in one place. The other thing that we helps is how to find the solution as fast as possible. And I think when I was the leader of the supply chain in Conconcreto, 80% of our time was finding solution for the problem, as Juan Luis said before, because we haven't planned before. The thing is, if you plan with this, which is something that BIM helped all the team to do, you reduce the problems in the job site. And also, for me, is the most important part because you are focusing what you have to do and know how to solve the problem that you live every day.
I just want to bring up one point. I think also one of the powerful things that BIMBAO or other programs or companies like yours can bring to the industry is this idea of material sourcing. And so, you talked about the embedded carbon, what happens to everything before it gets to the job site, right? So I think there's planning and managing construction, but there's also those individuals that are doing the construction, that are extracting materials. You talked about efficiencies in the mining. So how could your new tool serve to broaden our look to these upstream cycles, as designers, where we're thinking and responsible from the very beginning. And I think if you have the ability to provide us as a profession that knowledge, then we can't ignore it so much. So it's just a challenge.
It's a challenge, and as I said, BIM is a database. A BIM model is a database. So we need to collect the information. And that's most of it should come from the suppliers. And that's what we want to do is we would like to have a BIM library with the best data for construction. And that's the purpose of BIMBAO. Is at the end, in 5-10 years, having all the information, including sustainability information about construction materials. But we have to build it together.
So now we're going to open up to anybody who has questions for our panelists.
So Juan, when you were mentioning creating a BIM model of a whole entire city, the first thing that came to my mind was kind of like the George Orwell 1984, where you track everyone's movements, and it's kind of a scary thought. I know it's inevitable and it's part of where technology is going to make things more efficient, but it's just something to have a conversation about and a concern to consider from pushback from people. I think that's one of the huge concerns about a high scale level of it.
I would say it's a good point. I would say that it's happening already. I mean, Instagram, Google, Facebook, they all listen to us, and they know what we do all day, what we buy, what we eat, what we do. So it's happening already. What I think is that if we have digital data for a city, and hopefully a BIM model for the city, it will be a lot easier to manage all the human activities in the city. So I think it's going to invade our privacy. Artificial intelligence is going to change the world. Computers are faster than human beings. So it's happening already. It's nothing new, but yes, there's a challenge also, how we use data.
I think the matrix is here, right? Ready Player One is here. So I think it's important to have that awareness, try to be in control of it, but to your point, it's here, it's not going away.
Hello. This is kind of focused towards 3D printing. A huge fan of 3D printing. I worked in construction for a couple years. Regarding, you guys kind of spoke briefly about it was focused more on getting more sustainable material for it to be affordable. Was that really how to kind of bring it to the masses? I know that some major home builders, like for example Lennar, they're their first community in Texas. Is that something that you see being not just, you know, a premium tier, but something that's for the masses that will really help? And I mean, you can branch that off into developing countries as well to help with, you know, like hurricane rehabilitation. I think there's just so many ways that 3D printing can help the world. But is really regarding pricing and affordability, is it the sourcing of material, or is it the technology? Like, what are your opinions on that?
Sure. There are many benefits to this technology, and when I said before that our vision was that everybody could live in a 3D printed home, I meant everybody, also the masses, right? And that's one of the reasons here is from a cost perspective. You can reduce the cost of 3D printing because you automate build processes, right? And that is for everybody. So for instance, you spoke about cheaper or more affordable housing in, for instance, Africa. Well, Holcim, which is the world's largest cement manufacturer, they're one of our clients. And they're doing this year, they're starting a 52-unit affordable housing project in Kenya. They already finished the first one in Nairobi. They also 3D printed a school in Africa, in Malawi. They've also 3D printed one in Madagascar. So this is all around the globe. Here in the States, just to make it a bit more tangible, one of our clients in Virginia printed at home together with Habitat for Humanity, which you can say is definitely working to increase home ownership among the masses. Habitat did the same thing in Tempe, Arizona, and they're also working on a project with one of our clients now in Ontario, Canada. So yeah, it's definitely for everybody. And just for reference, our client in Virginia, for that project, they actually said that they saved around 15%, 1.5. We haven't looked into the numbers, but from what we see, if we extrapolate all the gains that our clients see so far, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, this will be a major competitor to conventional construction, which will benefit definitely everybody that wants to own their own home or live in something unique.
I also agree with him, and it's the technology that's going to change the industry. But in this case, cement is the glue for sand and rock. And I would say I'm very positive that eventually we will have a glue for biomass, for whatever biomass that is used in many things right now, but we need the glue, and I think it's fungus. And there's a lot of research using fungus with biomass to get it together and stick, and then we need all the engineers to start thinking about the codes using different materials and how they act with a earthquake or with other wind or water, whatever.
I fully agree. Experimentation is super, super important. Research in the field is vital to really push this industry forward, like with any other automating technology. One example was that when we 3D printed the first house in Europe, which we called BOD, Building on Demand, back in 2017, we actually used around 20% recycled roof tiles to reduce some of the aggregates for that mix. Unfortunately, actually due to local regulation, not here but in Copenhagen, we were told that we couldn't do it because the concrete mix didn't live up to local standards. So what did we do? We had a lot of smart students working with us as well. Well, we envisioned this idea in which you would print columns around the printed structure. So the wall would contain columns around, 10 columns, and in each column we would then place rebar and then pour regular concrete on top to give you those load-bearing elements. Now, from a sustainability standpoint, that meant that the rest of the walls, for those, we could actually use the recycled aggregates, which is perfect. And secondly, that we could reduce the width of the walls. So what you see here, we could reduce that because now we had only a few spots around that building that were load-bearing. So those are some of the ways that we can definitely experiment with new technology to make it more sustainable.
One more?
Yes, this question is for Jane Decker. We all mentioned, automation, twin models, sustainability, all these things. And you mentioned at the beginning also, you're not the enemy, and I appreciate that because, the permitting process for anybody that has built or designed here in South Florida, it's a lengthy process, and it could be painstaking. Do you foresee a moment where the permitting process becomes part of the design itself, rather than just waiting at the end to submit a set of plans and then wait until you get revisions over and over, and this eats up into the budgets and the whole design process. So, listening to everybody as different team members, it would be great if the city was involved throughout the process, so that when you're finished designing, you're already permitted.
Yeah, we actually encourage that. We don't charge for our design professional meetings. We want to see you from the beginning. We know that you're going to have questions. The code is not, it's 13 volumes of really fun reading. And it is the minimum standard by which to build. I tell, residential customers that all the time. It's the minimum standard. You obviously want your design professionals to meet or exceed that, right? So we encourage that conversation from the beginning. I think as BIM becomes more widely accepted in my industry, I just saw a press release the other day that ICC, the iCodes, they just released an API to plug into things like Autodesk so that you have the most recent code to reference and then also to incorporate into the clash detection or the code detections. It's limited right now on the jurisdictions that are available. We know that South Florida is a higher regulatory standard. We're a high velocity hurricane zone. And we're building to 175 to 200 miles per hour, so that's significant. But I encourage that. That's how I run my department. I want to see you right from the beginning so that when you submit your set of plans, you're in and out. I don't want to hold on to your plans. I'm held to metrics and stakeholders and the mayor and the council and citizens, So I don't want to sit on it. I want to get it out, and I would hope that you're hiring design professionals and engineers and contractors that can do their job. We're just there to oversee and just make sure that everything goes okay. Thank you.
Great. So we're running a little late. I'd like to close by inviting Danny Cremades, who's the U.S. manager for Conconcreto, for a couple of closing words. Thank you all for coming.
I think we had an amazing experience, an amazing couple of days learning and sharing ideas, discussing about not only, about the smart cities, of course, but I think we got beyond that. We've been reflecting about sustainability, about technology, about the future of our industry. I think it's been a very, very amazing experience from what I heard from different of you guys. So I would like to thank you, all of you, to being part of this forum. I would like to promote and to express that this kind of event are very important, not only for our professional career, but also for our communities. I think through this kind of discussion, we are coming back to our companies, to our academia, to our cities, with a clear idea about what the others think, about where we are, where we should go, where we are going. And this is definitely transforming our day-to-day behavior, our day-to-day decisions. So thank you for being part of this. This is a kind of event that, from my perspective, transformed our life. And it couldn't be possible without all of us together. It couldn't be possible without joining forces between academia, between private sector, between public sector, between Europe, between South America, between America. It's something that we need to do, And I truly believe in that. So I would like to close this saying thank you to the Dean to open this space for all of us, to be the point of contact of the different agents that we are here today. Also, would like to thank you, all the speakers, for your support to the event, for your openness to discuss ideas. To Juan Luis, for the support of Conconcreto for this kind of event. To the City of Doral. Jane, thank you for coming. Even though we just spoke a couple of weeks ago, I would like to thank you. Because also the government, different governments and different cities, counties, and states, it's very important because they also legislate and regulate our activity. So I would like to express this thank you with a small present. We will have like a small cocktail close to in the next space. So I would like to invite you for the closure speech with a small aperitif in the next door here. Thank you so much.